Hello there everyone and welcome to a new review on the channel. And today we're looking at the brand new, the newest release by Card Shark, and that is In2ition by Anca and Lucca, the world champions of mentalism in 2022, and I think for quite a few years running. Their first, I think, marketed effect published by Card Shark, a very interesting and a very good one that has a bit of things that you need to consider before purchasing, which is why I'm making this review. So make sure to stay tuned to learn more about what In2ition is, as well as its positives and negatives and things to consider before buying. Let's roll the intro and get straight into it. Perfect. So you decided to stick around, which means you want to learn more about In2ition. Now, what is In2ition? In2ition is an effect where you have two spectators, preferably a male and a female. They both select a card, and then they both find that card using their intuition. And then as a kicker ending, the entire deck is blank. Now, I am going to do a performance of this, but I'm going to do a very, very quick one. And the reason is that this really needs two spectators, it really needs engagement, and I don't have that. So it's going to be really boring for me to pretend that I have two spectators and ramble on for like 4 or 5 minutes, because this is a longer routine once you have all the pattern down and everything that you need. So I won't do like a 5-minute performance pretending I have people here. It's going to be boring. I'm just going to do a quick rundown. So you would essentially have your two spectators and you would introduce your deck of cards. You would then take it and you would split it somewhere down the middle. You would give half here to one spectator and half here to the other. And then you ask this spectator to name any number between, let's say, between 1 and 26, because there's 26 cards here. So let's say they go for number 8. So you'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and that would be the 8th card, correct? So this here would be card number 8. So I'm going to ask you if you can to remember that card. You show it, they remember it. You then place it back and you tell them, look, so I want you to look closely at what I'm doing. I'm going to take your card, bury it somewhere in the middle, and now I'm going to take your card and I'm going to shuffle it just like this. I want you to look as I'm shuffling the card back somewhere. We're shuffling the cards, right? You do this and then you tell them, now give me another number that you feel a connection to. And let's say they say number 12. So you're going to be 12. Okay, so that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And that here would be 12. And you take the 12th card and you put it down right on the table. For the next better, you tell them, instead of naming a number, just touch one. And let's say they touch this one here. You say, perfect, that card right there. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to show it to you so you remember the card. Perfect, remember it, they remember it. And you say, great. Now we're going to do the same thing with you. We're going to take the card and I want you to see how I'm mixing it back inside of the deck. I hope you can see that on camera. We're mixing it. And now you give me a number from 1 to 26 where you feel your card resides. And let's say they name number 6. Let's say they say 6. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And here would be number 6, correct? Right there. So now you tell them they had a free choice to name to go at any card by feeling. You named one number, you landed on one card, you picked the card randomly and you chose one. Then both of you named random numbers that you got an intuition, like an intuitive feeling about, right? You named that number, you named that number, and I think you do have really good intuition. What was your card? They're going to say the 8 of spades. What was your card? The King of Hearts. And then you show that they manage to find their cards again after all of that. But not only that, you think that they have a really good intuition because out of every card they could have gotten, all the other cards in the deck are blank. Every single card that they could have chosen was in fact a blank card. They managed not only to find twice their card, but re-find it amongst a shuffle procedure. So that is essentially In2ition by Anca and Lucca. So yeah, that is the effect, and I hope that you enjoyed it and that the performance was at least a bit enjoyable. So Having said all of that, let's talk about where you purchase this, how much does it cost, and what do you get. So this you can purchase at Card Shark on their website. This costs $75 75 USD. And what you get is the deck of cards, which is specially printed and specially made for this effect, similar to another one of their effect that they've released in recent memory. It uses similar things and it's working. And then on top of this specially made deck, you also get the instructions, which are around 40 minutes long. They have a live performance, which is essentially the trailer. And then they go over how the effect works, every subtlety, everything. And there's a lot of things to consider with this. There's a lot of minute things that you have to keep in mind to make sure that the effect will work as intended. So, you know, not the effect itself, but when you gather everything up, you don't want to mess it up because it can mess up the order or the way that your cards essentially are going to work in your next performance. So you do have to keep an eye out for a few things like that. So having mentioned all of that, let's get into the difficulty. Is this effect difficult to perform? And the answer is no. The effect is pretty much self-working. All you have to work on is your pattern and to make sure that the way you place down the cards, you know how to take them back, how to recollect them, to ensure that everything is gonna work well in your next performance without having anything maybe not work as intended. But the effect itself is super, super easy. It's basically self-working. As long as you can count from 1 to 26 and take the top card and either show it to them or place it on the table, you can do this effect. It is that simple. It is really, really simple. Just shuffle, count, and deal no moves. There's literally no moves in this. So the only move is knowing how to shuffle and knowing how to count and knowing how to place a card. Those are the only moves required for this routine. There's no other moves required here. Super, super easy to do. Now let's talk about practicality. Is this effect practical? Now, yes and no, because I think this is where most people are going to find a hard time with this effect, leading also into where you perform, which I'm kind of going to mix into one for this review. I'm not going to do it separately. I'm kind of going to mix into one. So practicality, you will have to carry around the deck. That's pretty self-explanatory. Second of all, I think this plays better on a table if you have a table so that you can spread at the end the cards, but just showing them like this is fine as well. As I did for the camera, I didn't spread them out. I just showed them like this. I think that's fine. And you can do it without a table, but I do think that it's nice to have a table for the presentation in the way that you do it. You know, instead of having the spectator hold down the cards like this and risk them maybe picking them up or touching them or doing anything, I think it's better to have it performed as I did, where you place the cards here, you place the cards here, and it's clear when you're counting what you're doing, rather than having it in their hands or maybe in your hands and then having to like put one in your pocket or whatever. I think it would be messier done standing up. I think it is better on a table, or at least having some space on a table. You don't need a big space, as you saw. You just need basically a small space to just lay the cards down. Nothing too big. But you will need this special deck which only does this effect. You will need, in my opinion, to have at least a surface where you can place down your cards. And additionally, of course, the deck is not examinable whatsoever. The cards that you put down are kind of examinable, but you don't really want the spectator to deep dive into them and touch them, because if they're familiar with cards, similar to most of the Card Shark products that I've reviewed up until now and that I'm going to review coming up, quite a few of them use kind of the same principles. So you don't really want the spectator to hand the card. Now you can ask them, can you turn over the card for me? They can do that, and that's fine. But you don't want them to extensively be touching the card, not only for inspectability's sake, but also for the sake of making sure that this will last as long as it can be. Also, additionally about that, the angles are pretty good. As you shuffle everything, your angles are pretty clear. You can pretty much do this 360 degrees. There's pretty much no angle issues. And the reset is relatively quick. I am kind of reset here for a next performance, but I did put a few extra things on my deck to make sure that I'm always in the good, as I would say, orientation, and I always know where I have to look. So that would probably take me a few more seconds if you want me to show you the full reset. So as you saw, I have the cards here, I show it's blank, I place the cards back, and I re-put the deck. So that probably takes, what, 3 seconds? And then for me, for my own sake of performance, I would probably take a bit more to reset. Let me just see here, just to show you, because it takes, the way that I want to reset it is a bit particular. So it would take me like that. So now I would be reset for my own performance. So for my own performance, to be confident in performing it, it would take me maybe, what, 10 to 15 seconds to reset it. But this is also an effect that you're not going to really go and do at every single table. This is more of a showpiece rather than a invisible deck or something you go like a stand-up Monty or an ambitious card at any table. So having said all of that, where would you perform this? In my opinion, this works well parlor or stage. You can find ways to perform this table hopping for sure. As I mentioned, if you have a small table, just putting your things on a table just a bit. You don't need a big space. You're good just having a small place on the table to go out and perform this. It's fine. It's completely fine, right? But I do think this plays out better in a setting where it's like at parlor and you have someone here, and there's not like noise everywhere and servers moving around with your food, etc., etc. I think just having 2 people standing here and maybe your audience in front of you will make this play better in that setting rather than kind of walk around table hopping. This is, of course, not something you can do stand up kind of street magic. You can't really do it like that. It doesn't really play well. And it's also something that, a lot of effects I say, oh, you can do it in like bars or whatever. I wouldn't do this in a bar or in a club or anything because this is an expensive deck. And it's also a deck that is very minutely and finely gimmicked, which means that you don't want to stain these cards. You don't want these cards to be dropped. You don't want things put on these cards, because then you'll have to fix it yourself and you'll have to be a bit minute to make sure that everything works as intended. So you don't really want this to perform it in places where there's the chance of things dropping on your cards, falling on your cards, water going on them or anything like that. So that's why, even though you can do it in those scenarios, I think it's better for parlor or stage or in a controlled environment when you have spectators sitting next to you or in front of you and you do it for them. I think it is much, much better for that type of situation. So having said all of that, what are the positives and negatives of the In2ition deck? So let's start with the negatives. What are the negatives of the In2ition deck? Well, one of them is not really a negative, but I know for some people it is, that you cannot have this deck inspected whatsoever. I don't think it needs inspection personally, but I do know that for some people that's an issue. An additional issue is that these cards are very finely gimmicked. So that means that if you don't do everything exactly as it's supposed to do, your cards aren't going to work properly and you're going to have to maybe retouch them yourself, which is not an issue. They cover that in the actual instructions, or you can do it with, if you have something else that can achieve this, which is a popular item in a lot of magic tricks. I won't really tell you what it is, but you can kind of work it a bit yourself. But you do have to really be careful with this because you want it to last. And I think that was a major issue with the other product that used the similar setup and the similar way to gimmick it in the past, where a lot of people were upset that the product was so expensive and that after 10 performances, it didn't work as it was supposed to work and they had to retouch it. They had to reapply certain things to it. So it is very fine-tuned in the way that is gimmicked. So you will have to be a bit minute with it. You can't really handle it super freely. You can do it when you're shuffling and when you're spreading the cards, but when you're putting the cards down, taking them back, etc., to reset, you have to be a bit more careful. That's something that you have to keep in mind as well. So those are the only negatives that I have with this. Or maybe also I'll add another one, is you cannot perform this pretty much anywhere. Even though you can stretch the limit of where you perform this, I think this does play better in parlor, stage type scenarios or controlled environments. Having said that though, let's get into the positives. So what are the positives of this effect? It is super easy to do. I think the effect is beautiful. I think it is very fooling at that as well for spectators. And I think for some magicians alike that are not familiar with this type of gimmick, I think it is very fooling. I think the presentational hook and the presentation of it is great. I think that the instruction video is very, very good. Lucca does a very good job with Christian Schenk to explain this for you. The deck is still, even though it's minute, right, it's very finely gimmicked. I do think it is still a very well gimmick deck, and I still like the fact that it's not a gimmick deck that, you know, if ever something goes wrong, you can't fix it yourself. It's in the drawer in the trash. This is easily fixable. Like, it's gonna take you maybe 5 seconds to fix it. It's relatively easy with an inexpensive item that you can buy off Amazon or out of your local craft shop. So yeah, there's a lot of positives for this, even though there are some negatives. So having said all of this, what would I rate it out of 10 and would I recommend this? So would I recommend this effect? And my answer is, I would recommend it for parlor stage performers. As I mentioned, you can perform this walk around, but I do think this is a parlor piece. It's a stage piece. We all know that Anca and Lucca are incredible mentalists, and we know that most of their work is parlor and stage related. And since this is one of their effects, I do think it is better suited for that as well. So even though there's a lot of good, I still think that you will have to buy this considering your performing environment. Because for myself, I'm going to rate it an 8 on 10. And the reason it's an 8 on 10 is because it's something that I want to perform and that I am going to perform quite a bit when I get the chance to, right? But it's going to be more casual because in my performing environments where I usually perform, it's more table hopping, kind of weddings, table to table type stuff. Or if not, it's like a parlor, but more parlor stagey, where I have, like, for example, one of my last things was like a small fundraiser, and I had like tables over there, over there, over there, over there, tables everywhere. So I couldn't really have people come here and do a trick with playing cards for them here, because the people all the way left, right at the circular table, all the way in the back left, would be like, what the hell is going on there? I can't even see what's going on, right? So even for those scenarios, you have to be careful of what you're doing. So I don't see myself performing it a lot in my professional gigs, but it is something that I want to perform in them, and that if the opportunity arises, I am going to perform. If not, I'm going to perform it in casual kind of settings, and I'm going to have fun performing it there. So I'm giving it an 8 because it is something that I'm going to perform, but not something that's going to be in my professional set because of the restrictions that I have when I get booked. So nonetheless, that's enough rambling for me. I do still recommend this. If you're interested by it, an 8 on 10 for me. It's a very solid product, and I do still recommend it. So if you have any additional questions, make sure to mention down below, like and subscribe, and I'll see everyone in my next review. Have a great one, and bye-bye.